Hi everybody. This is my Bits and Bobs number 11 and progress. After I finished last week's video, I changed my mind, or I decided, I should say, that the puffiness that was going on in this easy peasy Dresden flower block could be tamed by just quilting the background. So that's what I did, and it tamed it nicely into little grid squares. I'm happy with how that melded that piece much better this way than it had been. And for this week, my goal is to finish melding my Crazy Quilt Sewing Machine block into the background. I'm starting with my blind stitching that I've used to put all the other blocks down. I'm doing it around the edge. And then I'm going to do a little bit of embellishing on it as well. So I'll get started on that and I'll come back and show you how that's going. I finished my Crazy Quilt Sewing Machine block. I blind stitched all around the edge. If you don't know the stitch by blind stitch, you might know it as an applique stitch. It's the stitch used to applique pieces of fabric to backgrounds. I've shown it on several of my videos at the moment. I'm not recalling which ones though, but it's a good basic stitch to know, and it does stitch the edges of fabric on patches onto other fabric almost blindly. That's why it's called a blind stitch. So I did that, and I also did a quilting running stitch. Quilting and running stitch are very similar around the outside of the sewing machine to give it some more 3D texture. And I did a decorative running stitch on the outside in a blue floss. I spaced it so it was a 1/4 inch in from the edge, and each stitch and space is also approximately a 1/4 inch. Now, I wasn't being exact and I'm not precious about it. I actually think a little bit of wonkiness is charming. But I really like how that turned out. And I'm going to talk about my sewing machine and why it's part of this quilt. It's one of my favorite things I've designed in my career. It's the shape of it with the bottom curves is based on a sewing machine I was able to play with when I was a child, and it was an antique little machine that didn't work anymore, which is why it was given to us as a toy, and I pretended to sew on it. But I've always loved the shape of it, so when I needed a sewing machine for one of my quilt patterns, that's how I designed it. I've used it 3 times now in my Rose Cottage sewing room quilt. It's the feature block in that. And then from there, I used it as my sewing machine. I did a patchwork sewing machine cover, and that I used that same shape. And then again now for this little crazy quilt block, which all of them are available as patterns from my site still. What I loved about this crazy quilt version, and this is a tiny one, the pattern that comes with a bigger version too, if you'd rather have that. But I love that I was challenged myself to stitch each seam with a different embroidery stitch, which really sort of stretched my embroidery stitch muscles. I did new ones that I had never done before, and that was a lot. That made this block a lot of fun to create. Let's see, do I have anything else I need to share? I don't think so. I think it's good. I love that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the elements now melded into the background, so I'm making good progress. And then I guess the only other thing for today that I can share is I've been working on this. I did some turkey work around a circle, Turkey work being that you stitch it in and out and in and out with leaving the loops, and then you trim them off so that they're fuzzy. And I used 6 strands of embroidery floss for each when I was putting it in, so that's why it's nice and thick. And in the center there, my plan is to do a whole bunch of French knots. I might use variegated thread. I think that might be an interesting center, or I might just use straight blue floss, which I already had chosen. We'll see. It's going to be one of those little filler bits for this quilt. I'll show you as I make progress on that, but I was loving how fluffy this flower was looking. All right, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Like it if the video if you like it. That always is helpful for YouTube to know. And comment. I love hearing what you think. And yeah, subscribe if you want to make sure you get notified next week when I put the next video out. All right. Thanks for watching again, and happy stitching.